Okay, so your Kickstarter is underway for the More Than Human series. Susan, I want you to tell me about your inspiration for the series.
Well, it was really funny because, as I explained in the Kickstarter, I had been approached by a big traditional publishing house. The editor had read some of my work and really loved it. And she was wanting me to come write for them. And, her thing is she was telling me about how she wanted me to write paranormal romance with a Shapeshifter. The more and more she talked, it was like I'm sitting there going, yeah, yeah, yeah. But what's going to make, and I specifically asked her this. I said, what will make my story different from the other 50,000 paranormal shapeshifter bear books out there? There was like this pause. It's like, well, I just want canned stuff. And I don't like just to do canned stuff. Anyone who knows me knows that the squirrels run wild, and I like to write things that are a little bit different. They have more twists. Every time somebody thinks that they figured something out, then something happens. So it was funny. I told her as she was talking, the more and more she was talking, I got this idea. I'm thinking, what if it was the shapeshifters ruled the world and it was the humans on the other end? And so as this idea began to mull over my mind as she was talking, I finally told her, I said, listen, I said, I'm working on finishing a story right now, but I said, if you give me a week, I'll have the first chapter for you. Well, of course, the squirrels were already in charge of the gears up in my head. And by the next day, I had the first 3 chapters for her. And she was just blown away by it. And she's like, I need to have the first 3 books, 3 months. I started laughing because I knew what I was working on. I was just like, there's just no way that I could do that. I ended up turning them down because I didn't want to get locked in with a traditional publisher who was then going to take this great idea that I really felt passionate about and then bury it. That's one of the things you have to worry about, is that if you give your work, your intellectual property, to somebody, then you lose all control over it. And they can actually decide, you have this fantastic idea, but we're going to shelve it. And because they then own it, it never gets out. I was just like, I'm not going to deal with that. What I ended up doing is I ended up writing Ella and the Beast. And the more I fell into this world, the more I was just totally fascinated with the idea, because I put myself in both positions. You know, what if I was the shifter and we've spent our whole life hearing about this species, but they had gone extinct, so all we had was the relics. And I'm one of those that, like yesterday, I was reading more about Pompeii, and they were talking about, those that died from the actual volcano compared to those that they now have proof died from earthquake after it. And so there's just that fascination of hearing about these ancient civilizations that have lived before us and wishing that we could time travel back in time to meet them. And in a way, that's kind of what they're getting to do. They're getting to go back in time in their own way, but these people are now alive. I want to compare it to really like Jurassic Park, but it would be like finding dinosaurs and that excitement and that thrill of meeting and seeing something that you didn't think that you would ever get to see again. So,
well, at least the non-bitey, we will kill you in one stomp dinosaurs. That would be okay to me.
yeah, there's better fascination about it.
So Ella and the Beast is book 1.
Yes.
What can you tell us about book 1? What makes it unique?
Well, not only the fact that the shifters ruling the world in a modern day time period, and the humans have spent centuries hiding in small clans trying to be the Bigfoot, if you will. They're the Bigfoot of the shifter world. And I think it's that thread of discovery. It adds a freshness, that romance. In a way, it's friends to enemies, or enemies to friends, or however you want to put it, because there's that level of distrust, especially the humans have, because their stories that they've passed down have been locked in from what happened during the Great War when the shifters finally annihilated the humans, basically. That level of distrust that has to be overcome, and that new discovery and that slow building of the relationships, and there's threads of mystery and suspense running throughout the entire series as well. So it's not just a paranormal romance shifter book, it's also action, adventure, suspense, thriller mixed all in with that. And you have just the characters are just so dynamic.
I imagine there's also some cultural conflict in there too, because you've got potentially in a more advanced world and one who, whilst maybe not quite back at the men and women living in cave stage, but it's still, say, rural and remote as opposed to more city. Would you describe it that way, or how would you describe it?
There's definitely a cultural, and there's also a level of resentment, because you have to understand that, like with the humans who have been living in these very difficult remote regions, they haven't had access to all of the comforts of home. They haven't had a steady supply of food except for what they've been able to gather. So when they see not only the modern world, there's that shock value of all of the modern necessities that we take for granted are suddenly new to them. But there's also a certain level of resentment that they have been pushed back, that they had been held back, that they have suffered while the shifters have just gone about la, 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 living their daily life. There's a lot of cultures even today that can feel that way. They were just talking, I think it was in the Amazon, that unknown tribe had come out to the river. And so this is, again, this is people who've lived a very isolated, remote life, and they're being seen now. Are they getting pulled into a modern world? No, not yet, but they are being touched by it. But just because you're living like that doesn't mean that you can't have been happy and that you couldn't have lived a fulfilling life. Even though there might be at times some of those resentments and some of those, it's not about, the wealth and this discrepancy there, but it's about needing certain basic necessities for survival and at times not having it. And so all of this comes into play, which is part of that emotional baggage that adds to the drama and culture divide that they have to overcome in their relationship.
I think I'd be most upset about the lack of modern plumbing. Or that would be the thing I'd be most excited to have discovered.
Yeah.
So Ella and the Beast, I recognize it from my stay in Washington State. Is that like it? I know it's set there in the book, but have you actually been there? Is it from places you've been and seen?
Most of my books, there are a lot of places that even my outer worlds are places that I've been to here on Earth that look very alienish. And for me, yes, I've been to Washington State many times. My dad's family is actually from that area. My dad was raised in Bremerton. And so it was neat being able to go there and hike in some of the woods up there. And, we went up, my dad climbed most of the mountains there, Mount Rainier, Mountain Hood. And when I've been up there, we've gone through all of those areas and done some hiking and, traveling around. So I love bringing places that actually exist into the stories because it makes it feel even more real.
Yeah, definitely does feel that. I certainly had a sense of Snoqualmie Falls in the third book. Got to read a few chapters of that one. So you captured it very, very well. I thought that the feel and just it being there, the majesty of those falls being there. So with Ella and the Beast, so that's your first one and it's already out.
Yes.
The next two books, so is Mitchell, we've got, and then there's Jaden. So fill us in on Mitchell's Untamed Mate. What do we got going on there? What can we expect?
I like to mix up the gender roles as well. So in this case, whereas in Ella and the Beast, you had Ty, who was the shapeshifter, and Ella was the human. In this case, you have Mitchell, who is the human. He's the clan leader for this small group of humans that still live in the forest. And Tracy, who is Ty's twin sister, is the shifter. And what makes her so unique is we get to see her at the very beginning of the book as a young girl. And she ends up growing up to be an anthropologist slash archaeologist who has a passion around finding everything she can about humans and their existence and everything else. So when her brother brings home a human, she's like just blown away. And she's a very strong, very independent young woman who traveled around the world. And she is perfect in that she's got that mix of curiosity, determination. She's very tenacious, and she's fun. She's fun to write. Mitchell is young, but he has this huge weight of responsibility that he's grown up with. So he's torn as well because he's got his responsibility to his people, and that they have to, even though he's beginning to have feelings for Tracy, all of his decisions, he has to put himself second. He has to put them, his people, first. And so that can make it very, very complicated because he's got that conflict going on inside himself, as well as trying to protect them and absorbing everything that he's coming into as the male into a modern world. You would think that he's coming in with a disadvantage, but he's had his own share of responsibilities. So he's not one to roll over and play dead.
And in certain ways, I would imagine that the characteristics that you've needed to survive in the forest and leading a group of people, they would be ones that would certainly give you an inner core or an inner strength, which would be needed as you are trying to work out, what the heck is going on when you meet this more advanced society.
And you don't know, what do they pose a threat? And then there's also some other contentions going around because there's a fear that shifters, because of their past history, so there's a lot of distrust that needs to be overcome. And it doesn't help when you have some bad actors in there and you're getting this, who do you trust? And at one point, it comes down to, you trust anybody, including the person that you're having feelings for, because they are different. There's a lot going on in the stories about the relationships. There's so many complicated portions that can influence it. And I think that's another fascinating concept, writing it this way.
So book 3 is Wild Instincts. And we have Jaden and Van and Peterson there. So what's the mix-up? Who's human? Who's shifter in book 3?
In book 3, Jaden is the human. So again, now we have the girl, and Van and Peterson are best friends. They more like blood brothers. They're both wolf shifters, and they're part of a security force. Jaden doesn't make it easy for them. She is not, she is very strong-willed. She is a bit of a loner. She was Ella's best friend, and she's dealing with a lot of feelings of betrayal from what Ella had done, going with the shifter, and as the stories move on, there's a lot going on. Again, there's a lot of that distrust, but then it almost becomes like a battle of wills. It's this, you've got Van and Peterson, who, being wolf shifters or trackers and hunters, And you have Jaden, who is a hunter herself. And she was always a little bit of the wild child. So she was that deer that I would see. I remember we were on Devil's Tower, and a doe came up, and she had two fawns with her. And one fawn stayed right next to mom. Mom didn't get more than a few feet away. Then the other one was just like running all over the place. Just bouncing and just taking off, and mom just walks away, and it took a while for the one that was going nuts to realize mom's nowhere to be found, and it started going crazy like, oh. So it's that wild child that you always know, somebody who was like that. And so Jaden's a little bit like that. She's the one that pushes the barrier. She's the one that if you tell her not to go to a certain place, don't go out on that rock, she's going to go out on that rock because she wants to know why she's not supposed to go out on that rock. But she's not stupid. She's not one of those too stupid to live. If she goes out there, she's going to make sure that it's solid and that there's a reason that she's going out there. So she thinks ahead, she strategizes, but it's always pushing it a little bit further to see just how far she can go.
Yeah.
And I like that about her.
So
I like
it's
that.
more really about discovery and curiosity than necessarily rebellion from that point of view.
And it's a testing. It's a testing to see, just how far can you push someone before they put basically put their paw down. Can they keep up with her? If they can't, they're not worth her time. And I think that's it. That's what I love about her. She's going to make sure that she's not going to settle. And there's that sense of excitement in it. But she gives as good as she gets. And another great thing I love about these stories is it's not always the guys rescuing the girls. Oftentimes it's the girls rescuing the guys, but they always work as partners. You can't be strong all the time, and they actually work together to make it happen. And that's, I think, to make the story believable, you need to have that balance.
Definitely. So for somebody who would be considering, say, supporting the series on Kickstarter or waiting until, say, you release it wide, what would you say?
It's really your preference. One of the great things about doing the Kickstarter is that I have readers all the time saying, oh, I wish I could go to a convention because you have such great swag. And this swag is all geared right around the More Than Human series. And when you just buy the book, that's all you get. You're just getting the book. In this case, you're getting not only the book, but you're getting a more immersive experience. So you're actually becoming a part of this world. To me, that is part of the fun, is feeling like you're there. If you just want to read the book and move on, which I'll warn you, most people say that they end up rereading and rereading and rereading the book. Like me, you like to have those tactile things that are a great reminder, but they're useful. They're not just dust collectors, but they're useful items that you can actually get more immersed in the stories. Then the Kickstarter is definitely the way for you, because I can't offer that on the other distributors. Kickstarter allows me to offer this.
Tell us about the gorgeous artwork that you've got in there. There's some maps and scenes and that sort of stuff. Tell me about the humans behind that, and what are some of the things that readers can get in with the Kickstarter.
Some of the artwork that I've been having commissioned has been, I wanted it kind of the darker, edgier, because it kind of goes with the feel of the series. Charles is the one doing it, Charles X, we call him. He's an artist out of Argentina, and he is absolutely fantastic. I mean, he was able to take my visions of what the characters look like and put them in this setting. And he captured the mood and the feel for it. And it's not easy trying to take a picture that I have in my head and grasp that and then pull it out and then put it there. And I wanted, like with the wallpapers, I've actually got the wallpapers up on my screen right now. When I look at them, I feel like I'm there. I feel like these are people that I know. These are characters, you know, they're not just characters in a book, they're actual people, and that this is an actual world. And you almost feel like you can just dive right into the screen. And of course, I love the nighttime sky. Anyone who knows anything about me, I'm really big about the nighttime sky, International Dark Sky Association. My husband does astrophotography, so I have all these beautiful space photos. Being, you know, and I love camping. I'm looking out at the stars at night and thinking, oh my gosh, if only, you know, just capture them and bring them all down to you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to capture that in the artwork so that you actually feel like you're a part of it.
To finish off with, what's your last thoughts that you wanted to share with us about, say, the More Than Human series? What would you say are what someone's going to feel when they read the series? What do you think I would walk away as a reader with?
That you wish that shifters really existed. That you wish you lived in that world. It's a really cool world. And I think that's one of the things most readers do tell me is that I wish, one, when I finish reading your books, I always feel empowered. So I want them to feel empowered, like they could go conquer the world when they finish reading it. Two, that they wish they could live there because they really like the characters. They feel like they know them. And I know, like, when I've watched certain shows like Ted Lasso, for example, you felt by the end of it, you were crying right along with them because you didn't want it to end. You felt like they were your friends. And so whenever you need that friendship again, you go back and rewatch it. And that's the way I want my stories to be. I want it when you need a friend, you know, you can go pick up this book and you're right back in that world and you're among friends and you're living their adventures all over again and loving it. And then when you put the book down, you're ready to go tackle the world again.
I
I
love
think
it. That's exactly how I feel.
that's the
Yeah.
way all of my stories are, but I think especially with the More Than Human, because you see the trials that the humans have gone through, but you also see the hope and the joy and the possibilities of the future.
Well, here's to a very bright future. Thank you. Thank you for the series. What I've read so far is just fabulous.
Thank you.